Welcome, everyone, to From Fact to Fiction. I'm your host, Linda Whitaker. I write tech thrillers under the pen name L.M. Whitaker, and I love specialty thrillers. On From Fact to Fiction, we unpack the truth behind my favorite specialty thrillers. Think Robin Cook, Steve Barry, Douglas Preston, and Michael Crichton. And while each of these works differ in specialty from historical to medical to techno, each immerses the reader in a new but realistic world. In fact, the best of these blend fact with fiction so well, it's hard to tell the difference. We don't know what is, what could be, and what's totally impossible. It would take an expert to know. And that's why we're here. Each time we meet, I'll pair up with an expert. We'll select a new specialty thriller and we'll talk about why we like the book and unpack the truth behind the fiction. So today, our book is a 2024 medical thriller, Bellevue by Robin Cook, the author of Coma, and I consider the father of the medical thriller. And he's also written about 25 novels. Bellevue is called A New Tale of Suspense Horror about a first-year resident whose life-shattering visions reveal the truth behind some of the greatest medical advances. In another first, Robin Cook has added something new to his book. It's not just a medical thriller, but it's medical thriller meets paranormal, or it's also called a horror suspense. We'll see. So, who can we get to talk about that? Well, fortunately, we have Peg Roach, our author and expert today. She writes the Nora Brady Nurse Detective series and several standalone novels. Peg writes under the name M.E. Roach, and she is a uniquely qualified expert to act as our expert for this book. Welcome, Peg. Thank you for joining us today on From Fact to Fiction.
Thank you, Linda. I'm happy to be here.
As a registered nurse, she's worked in many facets of nursing, as well as serving as a volunteer for the local coroner. In addition, her novel, A Haunting on Dunbar Lane, deals with paranormal. We'll talk a lot more with Peg about herself and on our Meet the Experts episode, but I did want to mention that she is hosting Sally Handley's Mystery Book Club on November 12th, and they are going to discuss Bellevue, this very book. In addition, Peg is going to be on Sally's book club on December 10th, where she will talk about her paranormal thriller, A Haunting on Dunbar Lane. And again, we'll have that information posted. Let's go now and talk about our book, Bellevue. So Bellevue takes place almost exclusively in the iconic Bellevue Hospital in New York City. 23-year-old Mitt Fuller starts his surgical residency with great anticipation at Bellevue Hospital, following in the footsteps of four previous celebrated Fuller generations. The pressure is on for our first-year resident. He has a sixth sense that he can often read people and understand situations. But previously, this has worked to his advantage. For example, he always knew what was going to be on his medical exams. But now, this sense simply warns him of the horrors he's powerless to stop as his patients die one by one from mysterious causes. As he tries to juggle these inexplicable deaths with the demands of being a first-year resident, things rapidly spiral out of control. That's my summary of what Bellevue is about without having any spoilers. We try not to have any spoilers, Peg. So if you can, keep the spoilers at bay. So, though we focus on the facts behind the fiction, I do want to talk a little bit about what you liked about the book and if there's anything you thought could have been a little better.
I think I liked best just the fact that it was a mystery.
I thought first, Robin Cook actually is real inspiration for me. I loved Coma, Outbreak, Contagion, decades reading Robin Cook. And my second book actually has a little homage to Coma in it. That's how much I like Robin Cook. I love the history and the discussion of the medical advances, I guess the facts behind the fiction. I loved the world. I felt like I was there, really felt quite real to me, which is why I'm interested to hear from you if it really was the setting and what was quite real.
So it was his take on the paranormal,
Yep.
and I appreciated the fact that it was, there was a historical basis to it. So um, I didn't, I wasn't
Mhm.
looking to be frightened, I guess.
I guess frightened is the wrong word in terms of a horror, but it's that tension, that build up when you think you're, the increasing tension that you build on your character until you can hardly turn the page because you're so scared for them that that like, oh, and
Don't
I
go
thought,
through that door.
I'm sorry.
Don't go through that
Yes,
door.
exactly. Don't go through that door. Let's get to the facts behind the fiction. Um, Bellevue, the hospital, is so much a part of this book. In fact, as we said, it takes place almost exclusively in the hospital. Um, I, like many others, probably thought of Bellevue as only a mental institution, and the name has almost become synonymous with like insane asylums, unfortunately. But Bellevue Hospital is the oldest public hospital in the United States, and it's nearly 300 years old. I was shocked. And Robin Cook even interned there, I looked and found. So that is so interesting. So what all right, so a central issue for our protagonist was the fact that his ancestors were all famous doctors at Bellevue, but on the wrong side of a few innovations like anesthesia, antisepsis, and lobotomies. Um, in the book, Bellevue Doctors both pioneered these, and then his ancestors kind of were on the wrong side. So I guess I wanted to know, was any of this true? Are any of these innovations where did Bellevue really drive a lot of these medical advances, and were there people then kind of on the wrong side fighting them? What do you,
Um, I'm sure that there were voices on both sides of the issue. It was interesting in the book, though, that his family knew nothing about the
yeah.
fact their ancestors were the ones that were opposing. Um, they had
Mhm.
the one grandfather who could do an amputation in 9 seconds
Yes.
without anesthesia, so and didn't believe in anesthesia. Um, that was Antisepsis, yes, they were
Mhm.
against that. Lobotomies, they were performing when others didn't think that was the best treatment. And they didn't believe in informed consent. They believed that the indigent were getting their health care for free, and so therefore they should offer up their
Yeah.
bodies for
Yeah.
whatever the doctors felt they needed to test out. So yes, so I'm sure that there were voices on both sides, not necessarily their relatives per se.
Hmm. Yes, I did look up. There weren't any fillers listed in history, but there were a few leading doctors at Bellevue who really pioneered, especially antisepsis, which is germ theory and being clean and antiseptics for our listeners. So doctors wouldn't wash their hands in between surgeries and things like that, gruesome things, ideas like that.
And they
Uh,
didn't gown and glove.
yeah, didn't glove, nothing like that. And okay, yeah, there were a couple of the famous doctors that were from in Bellevue in terms of
Valentine
Bellevue.
was anesthesia.
Yeah, okay,
William Alsted, antisepsis.
nice.
Lobotomies, Freeman and Watts
Yes,
started that. Inf-
yes. And
Informed,
Freeman, I think, was a doctor who went around the country doing lobotomies, right? And pioneered the bedside lobotomy. That's a scary term. Oh my gosh, that was a scary term, where they would do lobotomies just at the bedside. And this is not a spoiler because it's the very first scene of the book. Is a flashback to them doing one of his forebears doing a lobotomy. I'm guessing that was medically accurate. Do you know?
yes, there were actually pictures on Google.
Oh, we won't include those. Maybe we can include the link if people really want to see them. Oh, yeah, so that's really gruesome. They would just stick a instrument in through the eye and kind of clean out guess through the eye socket and scrape out. Oh,
to sever the nerve.
oh,
So they had two methods of doing lobotomies from what I could see. And one was the transorbital when they actually went through the eye. And then there was the I forget what the other name was, but they actually went through the bone. They would
mm,
drill two holes and go through from the skull into the nerve.
insane.
And the idea was behavioral.
Right.
That was their method of addressing people who couldn't be managed. And we were actually doing these up until the 1950s,
Mm,
apparently. I think he was looking at kind of in the last ones were being done in the 40s. But when I first started working in a nursing home, um, was in 76. And I had never heard of a lobotomy before, but that was also the time when they closed large numbers of mental hospitals and just released people into the community or into nursing homes. And so we had a lot of people that were walking around with just sort of in their own world.
mm,
And they were folks who had had lobotomies when they were
mm.
younger. So,
Wow. I read and I saw there was a recent article. There's still a few people alive that are still, I think,
oh
that
yeah.
had had them as children that are still, still alive today.
And it really went out of favor once they came up with medications
Mhm.
that could manage primarily thorazine, which had its own terrible side
Mhm.
effects.
Mhm. Wow. Um, well, all right. Well, so I guess in a nutshell, the history is very is accurate. The characters on the wrong side of history, the characters' myths, ancestors are fiction, of course, but the book does actually mention real doctors who are real pioneers in these areas. It's interesting. But I was struck by the high level of responsibility that they give to like a first year resident. They're like, "Hi, it's your first day. You're in charge." It's like, oh my gosh. So if you're in a hospital, the person coming around to you is like could have never talked to a patient before and you're the very first one. Is that true?
Well, I mean, medical students had been around patients before and they were required to do histories and physicals, but the first year residents, which used to be called interns, yeah,
Mhm.
they were the first ones on call. And
Wow.
they usually, just as he addresses in the book, they also had, you know, second year, third
Mhm.
year residents that they could turn to if they needed help,
Mhm.
if they were lucky.
But really had to, these residents really had to lean on the nurses because again, they didn't know anything. And I, the nurses were all so friendly and supportive and wonderful. And I'm sure both of those are true. Both of those are true, I'm sure, right? That really they're the backbone of the hospital system, probably.
And the whole thing about July 1st being critical, that was always the date that the residents changed.
Oh,
That
really?
so
That's
we
true.
had graduation of
Oh,
medical students in May, June, and then July 1st
mm.
was the start of the new year. So yes, it was always a bit confusing. And I think nurses were supportive from the standpoint that eventually those guys were going to be people that they had to rely on also. So, and
So right before a big holiday when you're going to have all kinds of crazy stuff going on, you put all the new people in 3 days before. Lastly, the haunted hospitals. So much of Bellevue has been renovated, but the building that contained the mental hospital um, closed in 1984 and is partially used as a homeless shelter. I think it still is. I couldn't find any other. I believe it is still being used as a homeless shelter. and it would be a great place for ghosts to haunt, but I didn't find any listing of that. So there are if you look at haunted hospitals in the United States, you find a lot, but Bellevue's not on there, surprisingly.
What I got from looking at it was that there is, yes, part of the old hospital is the homeless shelter, but the rest of it was demolished.
Mhm.
A new psychiatric facility was built. But there is a program on the travel network about haunted hospitals. I mean, just I never watched it, but I do know that, lots of stories out there.
Yes.
So
Excellent. All right. Well, those are all the questions I have for around the facts behind the fiction of Bellevue. Um, I want to remind everybody that you can come to the Mystery Book Club and talk about the book and talk about with Peg and Sally about what you liked and what you didn't like and anything you want. And then we'll also be airing a Meet the Expert episode. And we will post links for all of those in the transcripts. Um, and that's it. That's all I have. Well, thank you so much. Then, thank you, Peg, for joining us today on From Fact to Fiction. Can't wait to talk to you at the Mystery Book Club. And good luck with and let us know about your upcoming releases. And we're super excited to have you on today.
thank you. And
Yeah.
good luck with your next one too.
Well, thank you.